restoring men and history, and we recently had Constitution Day not too long ago. So let's talk about the Constitution and apply it to today. Biden administration takes First Amendment. First Amendment incredibly important to you and your freedom. Assassination attempt to the Supreme Court. Joy Pullman, Federalist.com, September 18th, 2023. The Constitution that was ratified with amendments was to do what? Restrain the federal government from interfering in your individual rights. That was a major part of it. Now listen, Bill of Rights was meant to restrain the federal government, and the First Amendment was in the Bill of Rights. George Mason and others fought for you to have that right, to be able to say whatever you wanted to say, even if it opposes the federal government and is against their policies or against their super narrative. You're allowed to disagree with the federal government and put it in print and put it online. That's what they fought for. But we have this case here. If you like this video, like, share. If you believe in fellowship, pass it around, share it. Thank you. And we've gone away, and our goal here is to restore the Constitution. You can restore many problems in the United States of America if you just restore the Constitution that was ratified and amended. If we do that thing, your life will be more free. By Wednesday, Missouri v. Biden plaintiffs must respond in the Supreme Court to Biden administration claims that federal bureaucrats should get to filter everything Americans say via the internet for the sake of national security. Now, hold on one second. Constitution says what? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And we're focused on the Constitution today because we just had Constitution Day. And by the time this gets up, it'll be a little further back. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Isn't that fantastic? Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or, and here's the point for today, or abridging the freedom of speech important to your freedom. It's how you stand up to tyrants and totalitarians. Totalitarians and tyrants do not want this clause. They want it gone. They want the Constitution gone. You see someone speaking against the Constitution, you can say, wow, they're on the anti-freedom side. They're on the totalitarian side, probably. Maybe it's something else. But in the end, it's important to your freedom to protect free speech from the federal government. And this is why it was written. George Mason and those guys already had the Virginia Constitution written. So who was it written to protect you from? The federal government. The Bill of Rights was written to protect you from the federal government. And they are the ones infringing upon it. So watch. Congress shall make no law, which means what? Only Congress is the only one allowed to make laws, by the way. So here's a constitutional moment. Supreme Court can't write law, although they try to many times. It's unconstitutional, but they do it. They have through history. In fact, we can go whole hours on the Supreme Court and the courts. The executive can't write laws. Administrative agencies can't write laws constitutionally. That's why there's such a problem with administrative agencies and bureaucrats. So, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So who's that for? The federal government. Any administrative agency, anybody cannot abridge the freedom of speech, your freedom of speech. You want to disagree with the government? You can. You want to disagree with their super narrative? You can. Or of the press. Means the press can write opposition articles to who the current incumbent president is or the current director of some agency. They can write against that agency too. It should be disbanded. It's unconstitutional. It should be ended. That's the right of the people. And who's the government for? In the preamble, we the people, right? So who ratified it? The states and the people, right? Each state had to ratify it. Virginia had to ratify a state. So where did the federal government get its power from? The state of Virginia, the state of, right? Let's go on and read this. By Wednesday, Missouri v. Biden plaintiffs must respond to the Supreme Court to Biden administration claims that federal bureaucrats should get to filter everything Americans say via the internet for the sake of national security. Does that sound like what I just read? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Let's go on down. Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So, not following it, right? This is on September 14th, the Department of Justice. Now, this is when you serve in the Department of Justice, you take an oath, right? uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. What are they doing? They're actually attacking the Constitution. On September 14th, the Department of Justice, now remember, the Department of Justice is what? Federal government. So they can't do it. Federal government cannot abridge your freedom of speech or of the press. Made an emergency Supreme Court appeal to avoid lower court injunctions preventing the White House and federal agencies, including the FBI, from telling internet speech monopolies which keywords, posts, and accounts to suffocate. Highly dangerous to your freedom, this. The court granted the appeal the same day, pausing lower court injunctions, stopping the federal government from holding a gun to internet monopolies' heads to tell them what ideas to choke from the online public square. That's scary, totalitarian, and tyrannical. When it means abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, that's what it means. Now, watch this. The Biden administration didn't contest any of the more than 20,000 pages of court documents showing essentially every major federal agency, so not just one, not two, every major federal agency pressuring social media monopolies to take down ideas powerful Democrats don't like or face federal lawsuits. Now, that's scary. That's taking away your ability to debate ideas. And America's about ideas. And it's we the people. They're supposed to be servants, not controlling the speech, not controlling who you vote for, what ideas you see or don't see, what information you get or don't get. The federal government is not supposed to be controlling that. They're not constitutionally able to do that. They're prevented from doing that. So this is serious, and it should make you very upset, and you should peacefully argue against it and take action peacefully to talk about this. Write your congressman, go see him, stop in, give to the right people funds, and many more things that you need to do. Form groups in your neighborhood and talk about these issues. So anyway, Democrats don't like or face federal lawsuits, investigations, and the removal of their monopoly powers. Instead, it argued that obeying, now get this is pretty bold and so unconstitutional, how it's arguing against the Constitution that the founders that we ratified, the states ratified. Instead, it argued that obeying the First Amendment, get how rash this is, imposed unprecedented limits on the ability of the president's closest aides to use the bully pulpit to address matters of public concern, on the FBI's ability to address threats to the nation's security, and on the CDC's ability to relay public health information at platforms request. So what's about control, power, tyrants, right? They want to throw away the Constitution. They're actually arguing when it's very clear. I read it to you what it says. It says they can't do it. Now, she goes on to say, an independent reporter, Matt Taibbi, noted Friday the position of Biden's Department of Justice is essentially that the First Amendment endangers national security. Well, they always use that, right? But what is it really? Is it, obviously, if it's truly a national security threat, like revealing information of where your troops are at or your strategy, that's different than just using it, right? We know the difference. You Americans know the difference. Power, control, money. Power, control, money. Every time you think about the government, just think about power, control, money, how they want more. They want more. Only government action against protected free speech remain barred by this injunction. Did you hear that? Only government action. If you own a company, you don't have to print. But we can't have the federal government telling a company what to do. That's the government breaking the Constitution that they're supposed to uphold. That's the Department of Justice and the FBI. Imagine how ludicrous this is and how bad it is. That would be news to this has happened before in history. We've had the Alien and Sedition Act. You Americans have to watch this and stay vigilant about this. Lincoln, Wilson, Roosevelt. We've had problems with this before. So it goes on to say limited by the Bill of Rights. It's limiting the federal government, states, and the people. The 10th Amendment's clear. have most of the powers, and what the federal government was supposed to be limited, few specific powers. The states, any. Fathom how to function within. If shutting down Americans' ideas online is necessary to protect national security, government can literally do anything in the name of national security. Now, that was not the intention. Intention is that of the people, by the people, for the people, and that they are public servants serving you. This kind of argument is in the same category as New Mexico. They've been very bold. New Mexico's governor was very bold the other day, claiming that because she declared a public emergency. Now, I don't know the New Mexico state constitution, but a public emergency doesn't wipe out the federal constitution. It doesn't wipe out the Tennessee constitution, and it doesn't wipe out most of the ones I've read, like the Virginia constitution. Okay, so it probably doesn't wipe out the New Mexico constitution, right? And you still have to write laws through the legislature, so you can't have a governor doing that. Taibbi also notes the DOJ flat out lies to the Supreme Court, apparently attempting to and the government's constitutional duties with hysterical falsehoods and oral arguments. In August, the government complained about activities they claim were threatened, despite the fact that those activities, communications about criminal activity or criminal conspiracies, well, this is funny about criminals that they be concerned about with a completely open border pouring in. But anyway, are posts that threaten the public safety. That you think the people of Texas feel threatened when all those people are coming across the border, illegal aliens? Threatened the public safety were exempted by Judge Terry Doughty's injunction. We talked about that. This argument visibly irritated appellate judges. In this application now, they're complaining to Supreme Court justices about things they're already allowed to do. So if it's a serious national concern, but we know the government has abused that, the federal government. And the Twitter files have showed that the FBI actually paid. So we've got the information of how unconstitutional the federal government is acting. And it's up to you to stop it peacefully. But the federal government is way away from the Constitution, and we have to restore the Constitution, or you will lose freedom, and your children will lose freedom. It's about freedom. Get on the freedom side. Lying to courts and the public seems to be a part, now get this, of the administration's strategy at this case. How does that make you feel? Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, part of the plaintiff's legal team in Missouri v. Biden, pointed out the irony in an interview last week with Tracy Bean. It's driven with irony that the people who claim to be protecting us from misinformation are promulgating misinformation, right? I mean, that speaks to the dystopian Orwellian nature of the vast censorship enterprise. So this is serious. The people who claim to be protecting us from misinformation are putting it out there. They're the ones putting it out there. But they don't want you to have access to any other information, right? That's how you control the narrative. What did totalitarian societies, what did Mao want to do? What did Hitler want to do? Control the media. Because they know it's powerful. What are the two things totalitarians want to do? Control your speech, take your guns. Right? So you, the people, have to stand against that. Lawsuit documents found federal officials not just muting specific ideas and persons online, but also influencing platforms, algorithms, and content moderation policies. Well, that's bad too. Federal officials are not supposed to be doing this because of the Constitution. The United States Constitution was written to protect you. We celebrate it. It's a fantastic document if we keep it. Anyone using Facebook, Google, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and the like today is limited in his or her communication by government officials. They were never supposed to have this much power. We ratified a limited government with few specific powers, and we put the Bill of Rights in to protect you from the federal government, and they're breaking it over and over and over through history. Slip away, your rights slip away. They take and take and take. Even if the Supreme Court rules for the plaintiffs, this will continue. That's bad. Government doesn't have speech rights, citizens do, that's right. Biden DOJ Supreme Court application claims that stopping government officials, now get this, they wrote this down. This is how bold the totalitarian tyrants are. Biden DOJ, now this is the Department of Justice, they took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and they're working against it. That stopping government officials from censoring you, Americans, you, online restricts officials' freedom of speech. No, it doesn't. Bill of Rights wasn't written to protect federal employees. It was written to protect you. This is ridiculous because government officials have no freedom of speech in their right. Their official lives are constrained by multiple things, chief of which is the U.S. Constitution. You got that right. Constitution bans the federal government acting through its employees. That's right. Agencies. You see how far away we've gotten from the Constitution, and it's Constitution Month. And we have to restore it for your freedom. The president may, of course, use the bully pulpit. Yeah, he can go make a speech. Look, you as a president, you can go make a speech, but you can't tell social media companies what to do in any way, or your employees, or the administrative state can't do that, or Congress can't do that, or the Supreme Court can't. Go make a speech. He cannot threaten companies or individuals with government harm if they disagree with him. That's right. So that you can have free elections. So that you can have access to information to make decisions. He can speak, but he cannot compel. If his or any other government employee's speech pressures companies or individuals, it violates the United States Constitution. We wrote it there for a reason. George Mason and his men fought for it for a reason. To protect your liberty. Because without free speech, you don't have liberty. This is a fact of one of the reasons the First Amendment exists, to protect Americans from the abuse of government power. You can disagree with your government in America. We wrote it in there for you. As loudly as you want to, peacefully. There is a massive power and imbalance between the government and the average citizen. Now, think of how government's grown and how unconstitutional it's become. The unconstitutional federal government. Even between the government and powerful companies. And the First Amendment exists to help tip that balance toward the individual. It secures the rights of citizens against government officials. Biden administration has it backward. Well, if you want power, control, money, you don't want the people to have free speech, right? If not the court, let's go on. Anger a bureaucrat, lose everything. Given the size of the federal government, and this is scary, the enormous size of the federal government today should scare everyone because they can get anybody at any time. Difficult for anybody to be able to withstand it. They can make life miserable for people. They can take your life away, take your home, take everything, ruin you, break you. It's just too big and unconstitutional, and the main point is unconstitutional. They were not supposed to be in so many of the areas they are involved in, and that gives them more power over you. So the problem with being unconstitutional, having an unconstitutional government, they hire more bureaucrats, they take over more powers, they take over more areas, and you lose freedom. What are we for? Freedom. Making life miserable for those who use of their freedoms conflicts with the bureaucrats' desires. Now, that's not the way bureaucrats are supposed to be. Well, first of all, we're not supposed to have so many. We're not supposed to have these unconstitutional agencies. So all those should be gone, and they need to be gone. Secondly, government's supposed to be serving you, and that's where it's gotten awry. Notice how arrogant many of them are. Notice how they look down at you. In many cases, a government official merely speaking in his official capacity carries an implied threat. Court precedents have recognized this. Not only that, but throughout the emails and texts, this case surfaced in discovery is not just implied, but direct coercion. The president literally claimed social media companies' initial refusal to implement all, that sounds like almost a biblical Jesus Christ thing, right? All his demanded speech codes, what was killing people. He threatened to hold Mark Zuckerberg criminal liable. This is what you impeach somebody for, right? This is what you impeach somebody for. Breaking the Constitution. That's an important duty. You take an oath to uphold it. How many times has this country gone awry from upholding it and breaking your freedom? The White House press secretary threatened to erase the company's entire business model and cost them billions by revisiting Section 230. This is pretty awful. Myriad emails show the company's leaders experience federal demands as coercion. Okay? People aren't stupid. Now, we've watched this when we've called it out. They see thousands of prominent examples of government flexing its power over non-compliant individuals, like the FTC deciding to investigate Elon Musk. This is terrible. For a tweet after he bought Twitter, and then more recently, the Justice Department going after another of his companies for allegedly not hiring enough foreigners. Again, they've got an open border allowing the illegals to come in, but he's the problem. These are ridiculous lawfare exercises. They will cost Musk millions. What if you don't have the millions? You know, think about $500 an hour attorneys at 3,000 hours. What is that, $1.5 million? Anyway, So the administrative state supercharges government's course of power. Smart people and companies will have the millions to withstand unhinged bureaucrats' fury or the desire to waste millions on such an effort. Keep their heads down and their mouths shut. One can mention many more shock and awe efforts by the federal agents that have similar effects. This is serious, these administrative agencies and the power they have over you and your life and your children. These include the FBI's surveillance of conservative Christians. So the FBI, first of all, let's go into the Constitution. It's Constitution Month. Police powers were what? Retained by where? In the states. So you got a problem already. And here they go abusing it even further. The FBI surveillance of conservative Christians, and remember the Catholics, remember the school moms. Look at this. About which, and this is really bad, its director lied to Congress. So think about this, lied to Congress, and its raids on peaceful pro-lifers in front of their kids, attacking pro-lifers. See how this is a political issue? It's not about justice or the police or the laws. It's about politics. You don't agree with our politics, we'll come after you. We're going to get you. And they can, right? How many laws are on the book? FBI surveillance of conservative Christians, about which its director lied to Congress. Now watch this. If they'll lie to Congress, what else are they lying about? I mean, they work for you. This is a federal agency. This is not someone lying to his friend. This is lying to Congress, and they're supposed to be in the FBI. Fidelity, bravery, integrity. Right? And they work for you. Again, police powers were retained by the states, so this agency needs to be Let's stop here, Jeff. Hold on. Again, all unconstitutional. Again, we'll go back and strike the one before that. Again, any unconstitutional agency needs to be ending. They also include the U.S. Department of Education. Oh, here's another one now. U.S. Department of Education, unconstitutional agency. Why? It's Constitution Month. Let's say why. Article 1, Section 8. Where does it say you can create a Department of Education? It doesn't. Unconstitutional. States kept the education powers. That's what was ratified. Those are the facts. Opened a civil rights investigation into journalist Chris Rufo in August for allegedly using an accurate pronoun. So, look, U.S. Department of Education definitely needs to be ended peacefully because it's unconstitutional. And because it hasn't done well either. But number one, it's unconstitutional. That's why it has to be ended. Doesn't matter whether it was a good one or not. It matters whether it was constitutional, and it's not. Education belongs in the states. Health belongs in the states. Police powers belong in the states. So police powers, health powers, welfare powers belong in these states. This is how far away we've gotten from our Constitution. We'll just put it this way. U.S. Department of Education, and this is an unconstitutional agency. They have never been granted the authority to have this. Therefore, it must be ended. Doesn't matter if you like it or not, if it's good or bad, it's unconstitutional. States retain education, health, welfare, police powers. Of Education opened a civil rights investigation into journalist Chris Rufo in August for allegedly using an accurate pronoun. Now, get this, there are more than 185,000 pages in the Federal Register, and she makes a good point here. It's impossible for normal Americans to comply with effective laws that voluminous. That makes every American guilty. I wish we could get judges to follow the Constitution. They've taken us down a long road in their opposition to the Constitution and their denigration of it. That makes every American guilty before proven innocent at great expense. De facto criminal whose crimes are just waiting to be found. Bureaucrats have the power, and they didn't want this, the founders, to unilaterally charge, investigate, prosecute, declare guilty anyone that dissent. Now look, one of the great things, it's Constitution Month, that makes the Constitution great is the separation of powers, the executive, the Congress, the Supreme Court. If they get blurred like this, and these agencies combine the powers, you don't have many rights. You have less protection. And they're acting unconstitutionally, because we were meant to have separation of powers. This gives federal government's coercion power simply through asking for something. A person with the power to ruin your life because you made some non-PC remark. A bureaucrat thinks that he could violate, asking for a favor. You wouldn't want him to get mad and start looking at all the felonies you thought are thought crimes. Better just to comply. And a lot of people say that. Look, better just to go along now. Keep our heads down. This is how scary big government is. When they can run anybody they want at any time for speaking out, for just speaking the truth or disagreeing. My thoughts don't belong to the government. This is how the Democrats are using the incredible power of government to silence their political opponents. That's scary. That's what totalitarians and tyrants do. And they would do it, okay? So if we need a strong, large, nearly unlimited First Amendment protections centuries before, she makes a good point here. We definitely need them now, right? If government was small and limited, and they were following it better in the old days. But the Alien Sedition Act came up fast, and what happened, and why was that? We withstood that because of Thomas Jefferson was so great, and James Madison fought against him. So you had the Alien and Sedition Act. Governments try to do this. Presidents try to do this. That's why you need a constitution to restrain, and it doesn't matter the party, restrain Republicans and Democrats from breaking and violating the Constitution. Okay. Crucify anything. They can crucify anybody they set their sights on. Today's Americans need huge speech. That's right. Americans today need huge speech protections, even more than when the First Amendment was enacted. Imagine if Donald Trump uses pressure power to erase from the internet the claims that 2020 was fair and tabulated. Suppose his justifications for this were the same as the Biden administrations are now, protecting the nation's cognitive infrastructure, national security, election integrity. The Constitution protects you, but only if you protect it, and if you stand for it peacefully, and you make arguments for it, and you know how important freedom is. Freedom will live or die with you. You need a Constitution to protect you, but you have to protect it. It doesn't work without men of virtue. The Constitution does not work. The First Amendment does not work without men of virtue. You have a bunch of men without virtue up in the federal government. What do? Well, we've seen through history. They try to acquire more power. They've done it through the courts. The judges have really erred and advanced the power of the federal government and increased it. So has the Congress, so has the president. So it's up to you to restore the Constitution and return it to its proper powers. We must restore the Constitution to its ratified state with amendments. What they ratified: the federal government, few limited powers, the states many powers. The First Amendment protects your right to be able to disagree with your government, and we need to protect it. And who has to protect it? You do. We can't look to Washington, certainly, to protect it. Can't look to politicians. You got to go talk to politicians. You got to get in their offices peacefully and talk, have a discussion with them constantly, write them constantly. Go visit them all the time about supporting the Constitution and back people that support the Constitution. I know you're going to say Election Integrity Act. I know. But you got to advance your ideas. Revolution started with ideas. This Constitution started with ideas. So you have to, the Jefferson and Madison fought this with writings. So you have to start writing, talking, visiting your representatives, and get in there. Form communities. Get involved, get active, get vigilant, get brave. Go to meetings. Be in a men's group, be in something. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Thank you.